Hello and happy holidays. Welcome to the last Digital Photo Mentor live of 2022. So today we're going to be just doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about bokeh because I thought it would be relevant having holiday decorations. If you have a Christmas tree up with lights or lights around your city that you might want to go and photograph some bokeh, or you might want to capture some and use it like I do as overlays or backgrounds. So I've got lots of bokeh-licious things for you today. I'm going to start with this one here, and I'm not using I'm not using subscriber submitted images today. These are just mine with a couple of exceptions. So we're going to take a look at in-camera bokeh as well as creating some bokeh or adding some bokeh afterwards in the processing process. So let me hop over here and we'll get started. Okay, I'm gonna go. As you can see, I've got some lovely bokeh in the background today as well. So I've got a bunch of images here that I want to just talk about first. And let's see who is here on this wintry, blustery day in Edmonton. It's actually warmed up today to minus 20 Celsius. So wherever you are joining from, it's been minus 35 here, which is really cold. So Stephanie says from cold Oregon, icy Oregon. Well, get out there and do your ice photos, Stacy. Remember, Stephanie, I want some ice and winter photos for an upcoming theme. And also, we're going to be looking for holiday photos. So take those holiday photos. Slushy Ottawa. Just about start to be freezing. Well, we're just coming out of the deep freeze. Hello, Sheila. Happy holidays to you as well. And Deb up in Alaska, you should have some good ice pictures and opportunities up there for you as well. And Stephanie said she did already. Awesome. Okay. So as long as you don't freeze your tuchus off when you're out there doing your ice photos. So I wanted to talk about in-camera bokeh first because of the opportunity, like I said, of holidays. If you've got some lights up or your city or municipality has decorations up for the holiday and you want to capture some bokeh, let's talk about how to do that first of all. Okay, so the first thing you need to know when you're talking about bokeh is camera settings. Okay. What camera settings do you need to make bokeh? And first of all, what is bokeh? Who knows what bokeh is or what is the definition of bokeh? Okay, because we see some in this picture, right? Bokeh is actually a Japanese word, so it's not bokeh or bokeh. It's kind of bokeh, right? It's bokeh, and what it means is it's I don't know the literal definition of it. I'd have to look up the Japanese word, the Japanese meaning, but the photography meaning is it's these sort of out of focus spots of light that you see in the background. Okay, so not just out of focusness, but specifically places of light. Like here, you see these circles, right? So anything that was a light source or a bright area in the background has now become these orbs of light. Okay, so that's kind of what we call what we refer to when we're talking about bokeh. Okay, so this one was created. You can see my exposure here was f4. So you need a large aperture, number one, to create this. Okay. The other thing you need generally is a long lens. It's really hard to create bokeh with a wide lens because you don't get the background out of focus. Okay. So this one was a 105 millimeter lens on my Canon, which was what I was using at the time. Okay. So it doesn't have to be super wide. You can see f4 is not super wide, as we're not talking f1.2, right? But we still got some bokeh happening. Here's another example. Okay, again, a long-ish. So when I say longish lens, it's something that is longer than a 50 mil lens. So here we have 85 mil, and this is a 1.8. So if you want to get some bokeh, get yourself a 51.8 or an 85.8 or something like that. They're not super expensive when you compare to zoom lenses that have a great big aperture as well. So if you're looking for, this was a Canon lens, for example, if you're looking for a 70 to 200 2.8, which is a wide aperture and a big zoom, you'll pay a lot more money for that. Canadian is about $2,600. I think it's close to $1,600 or $1,700 American, versus the 85, which is about maybe a quarter of that price. Okay, so it's still more expensive than a couple $100, but as you start getting what's called better glass in your system, then you can start to do things like this. Okay, so you'll notice that this is actually a plastic snowflake that I photographed. It was hanging on a tree in a coffee shop, and I just saw the lights kind of twinkling, and I focused really tight on the middle of the snowflake. Okay, so you can see that the depth of field is minimal here at f1.8, and even the front of the snowflake and the back of the snowflake is starting to go out of focus with these bulbs of light, or these blobs of light, as bokeh. Okay, so you can start to see these are what's called circles of confusion. Okay, so the light speckle, or the specular point of light, becomes these blobs. Okay. Here's another great example. Okay, so here I focused in on the globe, same lens, f1.8 again, and now the Christmas tree makes all of this bokeh over here in the background. Okay, so if you have lights on your Christmas tree, don't focus on them. Okay, put something in the foreground, put like a person even. Okay, so you can do a nice portrait of your kids, grandkids, dog, cat, whatever, teddy bear if you have to. Put that away from the Christmas tree and focus on that as the subject, and let the Christmas tree go out of focus, and then you'll get those beautiful bokehs like this. Okay, so I would say the tree is probably 3 feet or so in behind here to get those nice bokeh. Okay, so you have to get distance as well. Okay, so those are the 3 things that you want: a longish lens, longer than a 50, wide aperture. Okay, so f4 to 1.8, somewhere in that range, big opening, and get away from the light source. You want to get the light source out of focus. Focus more towards the camera, closer, something closer to you. Okay. Here's another example. Again, another Christmas ornament. Okay, so you can create this kind of scenario by selecting something in your home. I've put a few little, decorations on my desk today. Here's a little snowman. So I can put the snowman sort of in the foreground and focus on him and get the lights out of focus. Okay. This is what it looks like without anything in the foreground. Okay, so this is literally how I created some of my bokeh texture pack. And if you don't have the opportunity to do that, you can actually just pick up our bokeh pack and add them to your images. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. We're going to talk about a couple of editing techniques. Okay, so how I created this was I literally just put the whole thing out of focus. Okay, and I just got the lights. Another example, right? How the lights come out in terms of shape depends on the light, and also the shape of the aperture and the lens you're using. Okay, so you notice that these sort of came out, they look like cat's eyes shapes, right? So then let's look at a couple of other examples. I brought up these here because you'll notice that this has all the same elements, right? It's a longish lens, longer than 50, wide aperture at f2.8, but I'm not getting those sort of like light speckles or bokeh. And I want to talk about this one as to why, because the light is diffused here, and this is all the sky in the background. Okay, so there isn't a point light source. So to get those really strong circle effects, you need to have light sources. Okay, so that's why things like neon signs, twinkly lights in like your Christmas tree or decorations work really well. Even city lights or traffic lights, as long as they are far away out of focus, right, will do that. Here's an example, right? This is a photo I took of my grandmother several years ago. And you can see that it's picked up a couple of these lights in the background and added these bokeh. Okay. but the rest of the background is just blurry. Okay, so in order to get those lights, you need to have a light source that is a little bit sharper light source, a point light source, so a tiny light source. Here you see the same thing. Okay, so even though the background is really out of focus, and this is a 51.8, which is a great lens, okay, if you have full frame camera, 51.8 is your great walking lens. If you have a crop sensor camera, get a 35 1.8 and you'll get this type of look. Okay, so it's more of a creamy, blurry background as opposed to getting those light sources. Okay? Same example here, right? So now let's talk about doing some things in processing. So I mentioned already that I had a set of bokeh. So Rob, if you could please get ready and share the link to our ultimate bokeh pack, which is on sale for our holiday sale right now as well. So it's 30% off, but we had some people test them for us. So when I was making the bokeh, I sent some of the sample images to some of our customers and our followers, and they created some of these sample images. So here's one example that was done with it. So this is the original image that they sent me, and this is what they made from it. Right, and I apologize, I don't remember whose image is whose here. I know Holly sent me some and a bunch of other people. So if this is your image, thank you very much. I'm sorry if I don't have all the names on the images. Okay, but that was created after the fact, and it looks real, doesn't it? It looks real. Okay, and I'll show you how to do that. Here's another example. Okay, again, this was created by our testers. Okay, so using one of my bokeh overlays, they put that in the background. This is a great one. I love this kind of thing because there's already a texture overlay done on here. Okay, so the person that created this one has taken the beautiful tulip photo and overlaid it with a texture, so you can see the texture on it, and then added the bokeh. Okay, so it's added even more. Now, one suggestion, and we'll talk about this, I'm going to apply a couple here in the live, is if you're applying the bokeh as you want it as a background, or if you want it to appear more real, just do some masking. So I would have masked it out so that the bokeh is not overlapping the flower, so it looks like it's behind it, okay, as in the background. Sorry, I've got cat hair on my nose. A normal occurrence here. Okay, and I'll show you how to do that. Here's a different example. I did this one. This is my image that I took of a rose on a very plain background, literally taken in my dining room. Okay, so you don't need a fancy studio to do this kind of stuff. And then I put it in the background. Okay, and you can do this with the new background replacement tool in Luminar Neo. So you don't even have to have Photoshop to do this. You can do this with Luminar Neo. Here's another example. Right? This is a silhouette portrait. By the way, this is actually something that I show you how to do. This is one of the lessons in our Portrait Fundamentals course, which is also on sale for holiday right now. If you want to share that link, Rob, maybe just share the holiday page. So if you're interested in doing some portrait training, I teach you how to do a silhouette portrait like this as part of the course as well. But I thought I would jazz this one up with a little bit of bokeh. So I've done this one a few different ways. This was one of my sample images that I used. Right? So I've done it a few different styles in a few different bokehs. And I think it just adds sort of like this, wow, you know, they're kissing and it's the sunset. And it doesn't necessarily have to be realistic, but it's kind of like more of a fantasy kind of portrait now, right? Okay, so let's talk about some editing. This is a lovely man that I shared a coconut with in Peru, and I wanted the background a little bit more out of focus than what I had. Okay, so this one was taken at f5 with a roughly 60 mil lens. So now you can see the challenge. Okay, so there's the three things that I mentioned are not in place here. So he's not far enough away from the background. I don't have a long enough lens. I should have zoomed in more. And I don't have a wide enough aperture to get that bokeh in the background. Okay, so I used the Luminar Neo, excuse me. I used the Luminar Neo portrait background, portrait bokeh AI. Stumbling over my words today, and created this in the background. So I made it more blurry, and darker. And I've got an example that we'll run through together as well. Now, this one I wanted to share with you because I just shared this with Rob and he was blown away because some of you may have seen this image in the past. You may have seen the finished image, and this is the original. So this was taken when I was on a tour in Turkey, and we're at a ceramics factory, and this was the man that owned the place. He was like the elder, and I really wanted to take his portrait. He had beautiful light on his face, so much character, and the background was a disaster. You could see there's people walking around. I got people's butts and all that stuff. So I did some editing in Lightroom to literally get rid of the people in the background. And how I did that, I'll just show you that real quick since we're in an editing tutorial here. So I used the masking. Now, this was actually done prior to the new version of the masking. So I did this quite a while ago, and I did it with just painting things in. Okay, so I selected him, then I selected this area. Okay, so for example, I used this area here, and I lowered the sharpness and the exposure and the highlights. Okay, so each little thing I'm doing one darkening. Okay, so lots of darkening, but I did a lot of painting in on this one. I think with the new masks I'd be able to do it much easier and select those things and darken them, but literally I just kept going until I had it as dark as I wanted. Okay, so you can see this one here. If I turn this one off, it's -4 exposure, so that's the one that's doing the most of work here. Okay, so I literally just sort of darkened those people out and made them black. Okay, then I took it into Luminar and I changed the background and gave it an antique effect. Okay, so I made a preset that makes it antique look, but gives it sort of a sepia tone. And then I added one of the bokeh overlays because I didn't like that big blob of black in the background. Okay, so Rob had only ever seen this finished version and he'd never seen the original. So let's look at those again. Right, so I went from that on the left to this one on the right. Okay, and that's all with processing. Okay, so again, you don't have to be a professional photographer. Look at the picture that I took on the left. Okay, so learning how to edit and what's possible, right, will take your images or help you take your images to the next level. Because previously, you know, maybe you would have looked at this image on the left and thrown it away as a trash because there's too much stuff going on in the background. Right? So think about the possibilities of what you can do with your images. So now I've got some that I want to work on here. And let's start with this guy. Okay, so I mentioned that I want to blur the background a little bit more. So you saw him earlier with the coconut. So I'm going to take this one into Luminar. Okay, now I'm going to take it. Oops. I'm going to go into Photoshop first. So the way that you want to open this, here, let me go this way, by right-clicking on it and choosing Edit In, so I can open it directly in Luminar Neo. So then it will open, it will create a TIFF file, which I've set up as my Lightroom preferences to export to Luminar with the Lightroom edits applied, okay? Because this is not the original unedited image. If we look at the original, oh, it is unedited. Okay, so this is the original image. So I could just take this one directly. I could take this one directly into Luminar, right? I could also do some editing here first. So let's do that. So my usual workflow is pick a better camera profile. So I like my Fuji Astia, and let me just get this smaller here. I like to do the double click on the whites and the blacks. Now you'll notice that it took the whites down, and I'm going to bring it back up again because I want to bring the highlights down. I want to make sure that nothing is clipping, and I'm holding the Alt Option key down. So when I click any of these sliders, it shows me what is clipping, if anything. Okay. Now he's pretty warm in terms of color. He's a little bit red. If I try and do auto, the software is going to try and neutralize all that color, but I like it because it was sunset and the literal sunset was shining on him. So I might dial the yellow down a tiny bit, and he's a little bit pink, but I like the warmth on him. Okay, so we want to leave that amount of warmth. I'm happy with the density, and I'm not going to add any clarity here. Now, let's see what we can do in Lightroom, because I want to see how well these masking tools do, and let's compare what we can do here to what we can do in Luminar. So I'm just going to do a quick duplicate of this one, because I'm going to open the one in Luminar, and let's do a mask of the subject. Okay. Okay, that did a really good job selecting him. Okay, so now I'm going to add clarity, and I might even give him a little bit of texture. Okay, because I don't want to add that to the background. So whenever you do the main sliders, it's a global edit. Okay, so it's applying to the whole image. I only want to apply it to him because I want to blur out the background. Okay, so I'm going to call this one the man, and then I'm going to select the background. And I'm going to do the opposite. So let's see if we can lower the texture and the clarity and maybe even the sharpness and take it to some extremes here. Okay, now it's kind of becoming a bit of a blob in the background, and I find that clarity tends to do that. See how it's taking away the highlights? So I'm not going to take clarity down as much. Dehaze just makes a big mess. But let's make sure we keep the highlights. So remember, this is only affecting the background, right? I pressed O on my keyboard to see the overlay. Okay. So that looks pretty good. All right. So then we'll just call this background. All right. So let's compare those two. Okay, so we could see the one on the left is the original, and on the right, we've done some blurring. Okay, so that's the Lightroom version. Now let's take the other one into Luminar and see what we can do with Luminar to blur this background. Okay, but I'm not going to take it directly in, and I'll show you why. Okay, if you take it directly in like this, okay, it will apply, make a TIFF, and apply the Lightroom edits, but then it becomes non-destructive, meaning that I have a new TIFF with the Luminar edits applied, and I can't go back and alter that. Okay. Thank you for the thumbs up, those of you that are giving the video a thumbs up. So I'm going to open it in Photoshop first. So I'm going to open it as a smart object. So this is my workflow. Generally, when I'm using Luminar as a plugin, I open it to Photoshop first. It's getting warm in here. Turn up the heat. See, I'm in my Christmas colors today. See, I've got my red shirt and my green earrings on. All right, so I'm in Photoshop now, okay? And I'm going to just bring my layer over because I want to show you, right, that when we are in Photoshop here, this little icon on the corner, I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Right? If I zoom in, what happens if I zoom in? No, I can't zoom in. There we go. Does that work? See this little icon on the corner here? That means that this is a smart object. Okay. So in Photoshop, when I apply a filter or another tool onto this layer, it becomes editable. So from here, I'm going to open Neo. Okay, so Skylum Software, Luminar Neo. Then I'm going to apply the Bokeh tool here. Okay, so it's an extra step that you apply in between going from Lightroom directly to Neo, and it allows you to make it editable. You'll see in a moment. Okay, so I'm going to go directly to Edit, and we're looking for Portrait Bokeh. Okay, so under the Portrait tools, we're going for Portrait Bokeh. Now, I tested this one a moment ago, and it worked really well. So I'm going to take this amount quite high, okay? And it takes a minute for it to analyze the image. Oh, see, it's done already. When you move your mouse over the image, you'll see the mask. So see, it selected him, and it's done a really good job. For some reason, whenever I see this image and he's standing with this stick, I always think it's a pool cue. Doesn't it look like a pool cue and he's ready to go play billiards? Okay, so look at what's happening in the background. Okay, so already we've got that blur with one slider. Okay, now we can adjust the background. This is the key one here. Okay, so depth correction slider. When you bring this one to the left, it's like bringing the bokeh and the blur closer to the subject. Okay, now because I've taken this one where he's separate, let's see what happens if we go all the way. Okay, so you'll actually get a lot more blur. Right now, if he was standing on the ground and we saw the ground would be blurry and that would look ridiculous. But in this case, because he's far enough away and we're not seeing the background, we can actually take this quite far. Okay, see the difference that makes? Okay, so it's not just the amount slider. Okay, this is how much blur is happening. Okay, but it's also the depth slider. So if you want more blur, make sure you take this depth farther. Okay. Now you can see we're starting to get some of those little bokehs on the leaves, on the highlights. I'm going to bring up the highlight glow. Okay, and you'll see that that keeps that contrast in the background. Let's darken the overall background a little bit and maybe even warm it up. Okay. Let's go even a little more. So now let's see what this is doing. Look at that. How great is that? Literally a couple of sliders and I didn't have to do any masking. And we even got like a little blob of bokeh happening over there. Okay. Very cool. Now we apply it. We can continue editing this image in Luminar if we want. Okay. Something I actually just thought of is what happens if we apply it again? Okay. Now the same thing we could do in Lightroom, because you noticed in Lightroom we sort of maxed out those sliders. I went as far as I could with minus sharpness and minus texture and so on, and minus clarity was making everything blurry. If I wanted to go further with Lightroom, I'd have to apply, duplicate those masks and apply those tools multiple times. So let's see what happens if I do this one again. Okay, we should start to get some serious bokeh. Okay. Wait for it to analyze. It's still thinking. You'll see the mask show up here. Oh, maybe I've maxed it out. Interesting. So my theory is not working. I was hoping that I could apply it again. I think Luminar is just not catching up to me yet. Any questions about anything that I'm using so far in terms of capturing bokeh in camera or creating it so far, what I've done here? Any questions? Does everybody have a lens? What's your lens that you're going to use to create bokeh? Tell me in the chat. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Did you see it pop in? Yep, there it is. So I can apply it again, right? So it's the same mask. I can do the same thing again. Now look at how much blur I'm creating. Look at that. Okay, big, big difference. So I'm going to apply this. And I might just add a quick little vignette here to darken the edges a little bit. And remember my vignette trick, turn the feather down to 0. Okay, adjust the shape and the size. I want to get this more round. And then in Luminar, you can adjust the position as well. So I'm going to do that. Then put your feather back up and adjust the brightness. Right? So now let's take a look at the before and after in Luminar, because it's quite a striking difference. Okay? I'm seeing an 85 1.2, a 100 mil 2.8, and a 50 1.8. That 100 mil is going to do a really nice job on Bokeh Lee. So try some holiday photos, because I'd love to get some of these photos that I want you guys to go and take. So this is your assignment over the holidays, to go and create some holiday photos with Bokeh. Right? I'm not getting a before and after here. I think Luminar is just really tired. My computer seems tired this morning. Even Photoshop was giving me almost an error. Okay, let's apply this and take it back to Photoshop. So remember, I've applied this as a smart object in Photoshop. Okay. So when I apply this in Luminar, it comes back to Photoshop. Then I can do any additional things that I want to do there. And if I want to go back to Luminar, I can just open it again and it'll bring me back right where I left off. Okay, so that's the advantage of doing the Photoshop Smart Object step in between going from Lightroom. Right? You're going to see it apply. And there we go. Okay, so let me just make this a little smaller. Okay, so if I turn this smart filter off, you see that it's applied on the layer as a filter. Okay, so if I turn that off, look what that's doing. Okay, and I have not discovered an equivalent way of doing that in Lightroom, not to that degree. Right now, if I want to go back to Neo, all I have to do is double click the smart filter. It will take me back there, and all the edits that I did in Luminar Neo are still there. Okay, so all the edits are in the edit panel, and I can adjust any of them and come back here. So this is what is truly non-destructive editing. To get back to Lightroom, the key here is do save. So don't do save as, just save, right? And then when you close, it will take it back to Lightroom. Okay, we'll go back to Lightroom, and we'll see it appear literally. Okay, there it is. So now let's compare. That's the version we made in Lightroom to the version we made in Luminar. And I don't think that we can get anywhere close to this in Lightroom. Okay, so if you wanted to get this level of blur, you'd have to go into Photoshop, do some masking, and refine it, and do that a bit more manually. Okay, so that is the Portrait Bokeh tool. Let me close some of these things that I've got running here. So let's take a look at another image. And this one, I'm going to do the same. Okay, so this is one that I've already done some edits on in Photoshop. Okay, so it's a Photoshop document. So I'm actually going to edit in Photoshop. So this is the key now of the second point. So if you've already done some edits as a smart object in Photoshop, applied Luminar or Topaz or anything else, when you go to open it again, make sure you edit in Photoshop and edit the original. Okay, so that's going to open the Photoshop document that has your layers. Okay, so you can get back to where you left off. So I don't even remember what I did on this one, to be honest. Aha, look, I did Luminar Neo. Right, see, my Photoshop is even acting weird. So see, I did smart objects and I applied Luminar Neo. And I think what I did here was I added some lighting effects. Okay, so let's go back. Oh, this is Luminar AI. Okay, so I haven't edited this one in a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make what's called a stamp layer. And this is a tricky one. It's Command Option Shift E. Oops, I got to be in Photoshop. Oh, I got to copy it. I can't make a smart object. I can't make a copy from a smart stamp from one layer. Okay, so I'm going to rasterize this layer. I'm just doing some steps here to create a duplicate, and then we're going to take it to Neo. Okay, so I've made a duplicate layer, and I what I called rasterize it. So I applied that filter, and then I changed it back to a smart object again. Now I'm going to take it to Neo. Okay. There we go. And I'm going to use that same tool again. We're going to go back down here to the Portrait Bokeh. And this time we're going to see something different happen. Okay, so I'm looking for a couple of different things. I'm going to take it to extreme, right? And I'm going to take it all the way. So look what's happening. See how these lights, remember how I said point light sources are going to give you that bokeh that you want? Let me just make sure that it's not blurring my people here. Okay, let's change the depth correction. So this is going to bring the blur closer to them. So not exactly the look that I want for this image, but I'm doing this to show you what happens when you have these lights in the background that are actual lights. See, now the lights that were there, okay, are now becoming those blobs of bokeh that we like. See that? Okay, so I'm not going to do that on this image. Instead, I'm going to use the new extension, which is Magic Light AI. Okay, so this one is really cool. It's not bokeh. Okay, it's kind of the opposite of bokeh. So if you have some lights like this, okay, so you could do this on your Christmas tree as well. You could bring up the magic light, and what it does is you see it's adding these little starbursts. Okay, I tend to like 8 beams, so I can adjust the number of beams. We can rotate the stars. See that? Here, let me zoom in a little bit. See, look at the stars. Okay? So we can rotate them. We can make them more softer, okay? So less clearness, so it becomes sort of foggy, or point stars, okay? Now, the cool thing about this one and all the tools in Neo is that you can apply it more than once. Okay, so if I want a different effect on the background lights than I do on this one, so let's say I want to have 6 beams and I want it coming from here. So let me adjust that, okay, and I want it more of a point light like that, okay. What I can do is mask it so that it's only on this one. So I'm just going to paint over here, okay? So then I'm going to close the tool, open it again, and then this time I'm going to apply it with less clearness and make them sort of softer, maybe a little bigger. Okay, so now they're glowing a bit more. I'll go with 6 beams just so that it matches. Actually, I'm going to go with 8 on those. We can make them brighter. We can make them glow more. See that? Widen the beams or not. So you've got full adjustment here. Then I'm going to do the opposite. Okay, so I've already applied a star here. I'm going to erase it off this one so it applies everywhere else. So now I'm only doing them on the background. Okay, so I can decide how intense I want these ones in the background. But you notice that I've got a different effect. Okay, so the one up front was sharper, higher clearness. These ones I'm doing more softer. Okay, so you can apply this tool multiple times. Now I can save it and come back to Photoshop. Sheila says, when you rasterize the image, did you just make a copy and send it to Luminar Neo? Yes, basically what I did was I copied the layer, Sheila. Then the copied layer still had the Luminar AI on it, okay, the smart filter. So I rasterized it. So the Luminar AI filter got baked into that layer. So when you rasterize a layer, it bakes it in. Okay, then I turned it back into a smart object and took it to Neo. So now when we go back to Photoshop, now we can see that this layer has Luminar AI. Okay, that was the original one. And the new layer that I rasterized and then made into a smart object has Luminar Neo. Okay, and if I double click this, right, it would take me back to Luminar AI if I do that as well. I still have installed. It takes me back to Luminar Neo. And if we go into the edit panel, you see that our magic light and the portrait bokeh, which I didn't actually apply, are still there. Okay, so I could go in and edit any of these you could see that the mask that I did here is all still there. Okay, so everything that I've done here is still here. Okay, now when I'm back in Photoshop, I just need to save it. And I'm using my keyboard shortcuts, Command S and Command W. So keyboard shortcuts for Photoshop, please, Rob. Link. And then it will bring me back into Lightroom. Right? So a little bit different than bokeh. So bokeh is sort of the blobs of light. Now we've gone the opposite and we've done twinkly lights. Okay, so you can do the same. So there's another thing that you could practice over the holidays. If you've got some lights set up, or go out about your town and find some decorations in the evening, go and photograph some lights. You could even try doing a zoom burst. Rob, I know we have another article on creating a zoom starburst or a zoom burst on the website. So that's something else that you could try by zooming during your exposure. Okay, so giving you some assignments so you don't get bored over the holidays while we're gone for a couple of weeks. Right, so now let's do one more. Let's see. Let's take a vote here. I've got 3 images. Actually, while I'm here, I'm going to get a vote, and then I'm going to remind you guys of something here. So I'll just put this on the screen. So just a reminder to submit your images, and we're going to be looking for holiday pictures, which is the assignment I'm giving you now. Okay, so holiday pictures. That could be bokeh or not. Could be your Christmas dinner, your turkey, or whatever you're having for dinner, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate these holidays. Could be family gatherings, could be events, anything. So I just want to see some holiday pictures. Okay, holiday pictures. If you go to the beach for holidays, send me the beach, whatever that looks like for you. Okay, so we want holiday photos, and then of course we still want snow and ice. Okay, so if you live in Alaska like Deb, or Alberta like me, you should have no problem getting snow or ice. If you are in Australia, you're going to have to get a little more creative with the ice, but you can still do it. So that might involve a cocktail, right? And some ice in your freezer. So think about how you can do ice. So taking a vote here, I want to know which image you'd like me to work on. I'm only going to do one of these today, and I'm going to put a bokeh overlay from my bokeh overlay set onto one of these images. So would you like to see the lanterns, the parrot, or the pelican? Tell me in the chat. And a coyote literally just walked by my front sidewalk. I just watched him trot past. Right? We would like to see the lanterns, pelican. Keep the votes coming. I was going to say bird, but of course we have 2 birds here. Pelicans are fascinating birds. Oh, more pelicans. The pelicans are neat because, you know, when you're photographing water and you get sort of those specular highlights on the water, you can often get starbursts on the water, or bokeh. Yes, a coyote in the city. We actually have a coyote problem here in Edmonton. They're quite prevalent. And I literally, like I said, just watched one run by in the middle of broad daylight. I saw your note, Rob. Okay, so it looks like the pelicans is the overwhelming vote here. If we have time, I'll do the lanterns as well. Okay, so let's go here. And we're going to go to the pelicans. So this one, I've already, I believe, done some editing. Yes, I have. Okay, so the original looks like that. So it was pretty hazy. Okay, so I've already done a fair bit of work in Lightroom to get them to look like this. Okay, you can see some of my edits. Let's just see. I have done some masks. Okay, so you see the masks here. Okay, so mask number 1 is the pelican. So I've brightened him up. Okay, so plus exposure, plus shadows, plus whites, and plus blacks. So keep in mind when you're brightening something, if you just use exposure, it's going to get flat. Okay, see if I take away the whites and the blacks, he looks just all gray. So I wanted to keep some contrast in the bird. Okay, so I added some white and some black, and I'm just using the clipping warnings. Okay, again, keyboard shortcuts. J, okay, the edge of his head is clipping, which is fine. And then on the background, you could see what I've done here. Okay, so that's the background. It looks like it's picking up a little bit of him. So I might want to do a minus because I think I did this one with the old masks. There we go. So I minused it on him. Right. What I'm doing here is minus exposure, minus highlights. And we could actually add some clarity. Is that doing anything? It's doing a little bit. Or some dehaze. Okay, so dehaze actually adds some nice vignette to the edge. So let's do that. Okay, so you notice how it's picked up some blue where there was none before. Okay, so we want to go from here. Now, in the essence of time, I'm just going to take this one directly to Luminar. So let's go edit in. Actually, no, I'm not. Let's go to Photoshop. Oops, I changed my mind. See, now I've done it. Now I didn't do it as a smart object. Okay, so I made a mistake. So I did not open it as a smart object, but I can fix that once we get to Photoshop. Please don't talk about things. Yes, coyotes are dangerous. Small animals have been, yes, pets and things. So don't leave your pets in the yard. Small dogs and cats, yes, they do go missing. All right, over to Photoshop, and there's our pelican. Okay, so I made a mistake. I did not open it as a smart object, but I can fix that, okay? So by right-clicking on the layer, I can still convert it to a smart object. Okay, so now anything that I apply, which is going to be Luminar, I could also apply the bokeh here in Photoshop. So that's why I opened it as Photoshop, okay? But I'm going to go into Luminar Neo. So I'm going to do it two ways. We're going to go into Neo, and then I'll show you how to do it in Photoshop. So depending on which version you have. So I'm going to go Neo. You can do a bokeh overlay with any program that has layers. Okay, so that's Photoshop. I believe on one has layers. Can't think of what else might have layers. Luminar Neo. So you can't do it with Luminar AI. Well, you can. You would have to apply it as a texture overlay tool in Luminar AI. Okay, so that's the little trick. All right, so to add a bokeh, all we need to do is to add a layer. Right, so over here is the layers panel in Luminar. So we're just going to click plus. And some of these come with Luminar. Okay, so you get some stardust, sparklers, light leaks, and what they call flares. Okay, so we could even try one of these and see what it looks like. Okay, so it's basically doing this. And you'll notice that when I've applied it, these have come preset with a different blend mode. Right, so it's not going to overwrite the image, right? We can flip this around. Okay, so that's not bad. That's kind of interesting, but not what I'm looking for. So I'm going to delete this layer, and I'm going to go find one of my bokehs. You know, I've already got some in here. So when you click more, anything that you've previously added as a layer will still be in here. So I've got some bokeh already in here. Now I'm going to pick one that I think is going to go well with this image, and that's this one here because it's already got some teals and some blues. Okay. Now when you add a layer, it comes in at opacity 50 and blend mode normal. You notice when I added the one that was basically already part of Neo, it changed the blend mode. So I'm going to change the blend mode. And generally I find with these things, you're either going to want lighten, screen, or overlay. Okay, so those are the most common. So I think in this one, we're going to try screen, but I don't want the bokeh here. I want it up here. So we're going to flip it around until I get it up in this corner. Okay, so that looks better. Right, now you notice that we can adjust the opacity. Okay. Actually, that looks pretty good right there. I like the bokeh there. Right, now remember I said you want to mask it off of the subject. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Okay, so this is a layer. I'm going to keep the opacity up high, and I'm going to mask with the brush and erase. Okay, so I'm going to dial the softness down a little bit, I'm going to keep my opacity high. So the bokeh wouldn't be showing up down here. So I definitely want to erase it from down here. Okay. So let's see what happens when I do that. Okay. Then I want to erase it from his head, but I'm going to go a little bit lower opacity. Okay. See how that worked? And then get a smaller brush, get down to his beak, and then get his body. I'm not going super close to the edges because if it kind of blends over a little bit, because you'll notice that it's also changing the color of the image a little bit. So I want that to sort of bleed into him and make it feel more natural. Okay. I'm not crazy about these ones over here, so I can mask these as well, or by lowering the strength of my brush. So I'm using erase again. And remember, they changed it in Luminar Neo. So look at my brush. There's a minus in the middle. If I press the X key, it changes to a plus, and now it's paint. Watch the paint versus erase, okay? X is changing back and forth. I'm just pressing X, right? So I'm going to erase at 50% strength over here. So I'm just going to erase this part, okay? So it lightened these bokeh, or I guess darkened in this case. So they're still kind of there, but I haven't erased them completely. And I want to get a little bit more of his head, like so. Okay, so let's see what this is doing. If we want to see the before and after, oh, I missed his tail. Let me get his tail. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here because I'm missing his tail feathers. So it's overlapping a little bit on his tail. So I'm going to go with the lowered opacity because I want that color. And then a smaller brush just to get that feather. There we go. Right? So you can't do a before and after. Well, we can do a before and after. I can close this layer. So there's our before and after. That's the backslash key. Okay. Or if you've got lots of edits that you just want to see before and after the layer, you can just hide the layer by right-clicking it and then show it again. Right. Now the other thing that we can do is after we've applied this bokeh, we can change the color. Okay. So maybe it's not matching this as well as I'd like. Okay, so we can go down. We're still on the bokeh layer. Make sure you're on the right layer. We can go down here and literally just start shifting the color. Oops, see what happens? I'm shifting the color of the bokeh, but the bird is not changing. Okay, so now everything is more teal. See that? Now everything is pink. Okay, so we can decide how do we want this to apply. Or if I just want to shift these colors, I can shift the hue. So I just have to figure out what hue it is. It looks like it's got some purple. See, as I'm moving purple, okay, so I'm going to change the purple over to be more blue. And then let's see about this one. Yeah, this one is affecting it as well. So I'm just checking all the sliders to see what they are affecting. That looks pretty good. Right? Also, besides shifting the color, we can also affect things like structure. So if we want the bokeh to be sharper, we can go increase structure. Now you see the bokeh is sharper. See that? So blurry, sharper. Okay. If I go the opposite way, we can blur it even more. So you have a lot of control when you're applying these overlays as to how you want them to look. Okay. We could also brighten them a bit more. Okay. So again, this is only applying on the bokeh layer. So we could go in and do a curve to brighten the bokeh. Okay. Like so. If you're not familiar with curves, I've got a video on that. Or we could just do smart contrast. See how the bokeh is coming out more when I increase the contrast? Okay. Or we can just increase the whites, which would brighten the bokeh. See that? So you have a lot of flexibility when you're applying these. And then, of course, we can always go back to the layer and dial it down if it's gotten too strong. See that? Okay, so now I'm happy with that. I'm going to apply it. All right. Okay, we're talking about animals in the chat. Okay, so now we're heading back to Photoshop. And there's the layer with the bokeh applied. Okay, now here's the cool thing, right? So in Photoshop, you can do the same thing. If you want to apply a layer, I'm just going to turn this one off, or we can apply another one. I'll just apply another one. Okay, so I'm going to go find some bokehs. Where's my Finder window? There we go. So I got to find my bokeh overlay pack. Give me a second here to navigate to it. And there we go. We've got bokeh. So many folders. Okay, so I'm just going to view this here. So let's take a look and see which one might look good on here. Maybe I want some with yellow. Okay. I'm thinking I want some yellow bokeh. So I'm just kind of scrolling through. That one's kind of interesting. See, there's like, it's like almost a sunburst there. That one might be kind of interesting. That one might be kind of interesting. And I'm just imagining what this would look like overlaid on the pelican. So that's orange. So that's going to shift the image color as well, right? So if I overlay that, it's going to shift the color of the whole image. I think I like that one with the splotch. Yeah, so that might be cool. Some yellow bokeh. That one's also kind of interesting. That one looks like the sun. I'm going to go back to this one that was over here that had blue and this one. So to add an image like this into Photoshop or into your image in Photoshop, actually, I might change my mind. Let's go back here. Let's do this one. To add an image like this, I'm just trying to figure out which one was going to look good. Into Photoshop, there's two different ways you can do that. Okay, you can go into Photoshop and go File and Place Embedded. Then you have to navigate to the file that you want to add and add it. Okay, or since we've already found it right here in Finder, right, all I have to do is grab this image and drop it into Photoshop, and it's going to drop it as a layer. You notice that it sized it to match. Okay, and when I hit enter, it's a smart object. Okay, so the smart object here, the benefit here is I can size it and resize it and not lose image quality. Now, of course, it's added the layer at opacity 100 and the blend mode is normal. So we know we're going to need to change our blend mode. And the cool thing in Photoshop is you can see a preview. Okay, so lighten might work. Overlay might work actually, or soft light, but we'll have to play with the opacity a little bit. Excuse me, I got a tickle. I've had a cold this week, and it's left me with a tickle in my throat. Sheila says, these look like oil on water. They weren't, but good guess. Okay, so now that we've got this layer added, it's a little bit more work in Photoshop than in Luminar. So let me just make this smaller. If we want to rotate it, there isn't a button to do so. And you notice we have to know where to find the blend mode. So that's the pull down here. Opacity is here. Right? But if I want to rotate it, we have to use transform. Okay, so if you do rotate, it'll rotate the whole image. Okay, so you have to use transform, and then you can either flip it or rotate. Okay, so there's a flip. I'll undo that. Transform. Let's flip it the other way. The bokehs look like they're in a very similar place, so I could even just move them around. And you can also do free transform if we want to make the bokeh bigger. My apologies. Okay, so we can then move the bokeh around where we want it. We can also do stuff like this. Okay, so this is free transform. So I can put it where I want, and then we can just mask it in. Right? Again, not automatic. So on this layer, here's the bottom of my layers. I got to make my layer smaller. Give me a second. Okay, there we go. Go away. There we go. Okay, layers. Now, to add a mask, we have to go down here. And now I have a mask. And this is where you need to know what color that you need to paint with, right? So your mask comes in as white. You need to paint with black to hide things, right? So I'm going to paint with black using the paintbrush. And this is a lot of the stuff I teach in the Photoshop course, actually. So if you'd like to learn some of these things, you might want to take the Photoshop course. Now, I only want a few of these bokehs, right? So I'm just masking, right? Because there's a lot of this bokeh here that I don't want. I just wanted a couple of these yellow ones over here. Okay, so now you can see what this layer is doing. And I've got one over top of the bird, so I don't want it on him. There we go. Okay, so turn the layer off with the eyeball, and it's just picking up the bokeh there. Okay. So now I was actually happy with it the way it was with the blue, but I just did another one to show you how to do it in Photoshop. Okay, so it's actually easier to do it in Luminar. So if you have Luminar, you can apply a bokeh using the layers, or you can apply it in Photoshop. Okay, Photoshop does give you more options and more flexibility, but you also have to know more and know how to use it. Okay, so then we're going to apply it and go back to Lightroom. Wait for it. Oh, I know. We were doing the Cuba live yesterday. So for those of you that didn't join in yesterday, my friend Daniel and I did a Cuba webinar where we just basically shared some of our images. And I'm going to be sharing that video. So if you are not on our email list, we're not going to put it here on YouTube because it's not really about editing, and our channel is about editing. But if you'd like to see that, I'll be sending out a link by email. So there's our pelican, right? Let's do one more and we'll call it a day. So let's do the lanterns, which was the other choice. Okay, so this one, I'm going to take it directly into Neo, just in the essence of time. Okay, now he's telling, see, it's telling me I'm editing a copy and I'm going in as a TIFF. Yes, that's fine. Okay, so again, keep in mind that now that I'm going this way, the new image that I get will not be editable. It will be a cooked in version. Okay. So I'm going to go in here and add a layer. Now, for those of you that have Neo, I noticed that there's actually an update today, and I haven't done that yet. So if you have Neo, go ahead and do the update. So this one, I want to get some bokeh that are like blue and orange. And I don't have any loaded in there. So I am going to add an image. Now I need to find those bokehs again. So bear with me as I have, see, this is how my folders are organized. So on my hard drive, so I know how to find things. Everything is a nice little subfolder. See that? Again, I want to get one that's got probably some orange, right, to go with the lanterns. But we know that we can alter the color after it gets added as well. That one's got a little bit of orange and some blue, so that one might work well. And I think that one's already in Luminar. Okay, that one might work well. Okay, so let's remember number 19. That one might work well. I think 19 is going to be the one. Okay, so let's go with this one. Okay, so it added it into the images. Now I just need to add it as a layer. Okay, remember opacity, blend mode. Okay, let's try overlay. And we got a couple of bokehs. Remember, I can flip it around. Okay, soft light is literally just softer than overlay. This almost looks like the moon, doesn't it? Let's see what happens if I go screen. Okay, so screen lightens everything. I don't know. Let's go back to overlay. See how overlay actually adds contrast? So everything in this section here is looking for whatever is darker in the new image. So let me just turn it up to 100%. In this blend mode section, darken, multiply, and color burn are looking for anything that's darker on this layer than the one below. And that's what's showing. Okay, so we're only seeing the darkness here. So that's the opposite of what we want. Lighten and screen show anything that's lighter than the layer below. Okay, so that's why we're seeing that. Right. In overlay, in this section, it's adding contrast. So anything that is gray, right, it's looking for gray and adding to that area. So it's adding it in the midtones. Okay. I honestly don't remember which one I used here. I know I did a version of this image before. Yeah, soft light. Maybe I did use one of these other ones. Let's see. Maybe it was the pink one. Maybe I did add pink. Let's try this one. Aha! So I'm going to hide this layer. Okay, so experimentation sometimes. I can't remember which one I used. Screen tends to lighten everything, and I'm just looking for the bokeh. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. That's kind of cool. So let's keep them subtle. And again, I'm just going to mask it off this lantern. Like that. See how when I mask it off the lantern, it looks like it's behind? See the trick? See that? See, there's a thing coming down on the lantern there. See, it looks like it's behind. I would do a little better job masking here because I'm kind of doing a rough job. But see how it looks like the bokeh is now behind? See that? So that's the trick with masking. And I'm not sure that I want it up here either. Oops, I'm on paint. See? I noticed that I was on paint. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Okay, now they're pink. If I want them to be more orange, we can shift the color. Okay, so let's check the color. We can shift more orange this way. Let's see. Yeah, I've kind of gotten rid of the color now, haven't I? Let me fix this. Okay, let's see. I just want to shift it a little bit orange. Look at how we can change the color. Hey, amazing. Blue actually looks good too. Blue actually looks really good. Pink. Still want orange. There we go. Now we're getting closer. Something like that. Right? And if we want more color, we can just go into develop under the white balance. Give it some more yellow. And take away that pink. Now we kind of match the color a little better of the lanterns. Okay. So there's our before and after. You can see a little bit up here. Don't like that one. Let's remove that one. And we could also add a texture on this one if we wanted as well. So I just actually made a new texture pack, which we haven't really told everybody about yet, of Moroccan textures. So if you would like to have some textures from Morocco, you can check out our new Morocco texture pack. Okay, overlay and soft light definitely work well for textures. Right? See how it's looking like a painting now? Something like that. Okay, so there's our before and after. I'm not happy with that texture. I like a different texture. A lot of this is just playing around, right? I'm just literally sort of seeing what works. I'm looking for a rough texture. Oh, this is a pink one. This one might work okay. Overlay for textures works really well. There we go. That's more what I was looking for. I'm looking for something to make it look like it's like an old Japanese picture, like an old lantern, right? And I might even go sepia on this one, right? So something like that. And the mood. You notice that the LUTs have now been categorized, which is really cool, right? I like the sepia one. So again, remember this is only applying on the base layer now, okay? So I can make the base layer look a little bit more antique. But if I want that color to appear on all of them, I have to apply it to all three, okay? Something like that. Might darken this image a little bit. Okay, so see how one thing, I apply one thing, and then I got to go back and apply another. So now we've applied a bokeh overlay, a texture overlay, and then went back and edited the original image to give it more of an antique feel, right? Let's take that back into Lightroom. Karina Lynn, awesome. I hope you do experiment. Again, just a reminder to send us your holiday photos, and I'll provide the link again. Rob, if you could provide the submission link in the chat, that would be handy for them. You're welcome. I provide all kinds of cool tips like that on our channel, and regularly. We do this normally on Saturdays, but because it's Christmas Eve in the Northern Hemisphere tomorrow, or in the Western Hemisphere, I guess, then we are doing this today. And I thought we'd do a holiday theme. Sheila says, good to see I'm not the only one mixing up paint and erase. No, I do it all the time, Sheila. And the cool thing is, though, if you get started and you're happy with your painting, all you got to do is invert the mask, right? So if you totally screw it up, just keep going and then just invert it, right? That's what I do. And there is our new version. Now, interesting enough, I'm going to see, because I've got this one in another version here somewhere. These are all of my before and afters. There it is. Right, let me just bring this one back over here. So let's take a look, because now I've done this one a few different versions. Okay, so let's take a look at the before and after. Okay, so this is the original. This is the one we just did in the middle, and that's the one I did previously. Okay, so original, one we did today, and the one I did the other day. So obviously I used a different bokeh. I had some, I had some big yellow ones and blue ones there, and I just totally forgot which one I used. But you know what? Made something totally different, right? So there is no right or wrong when you're doing this kind of stuff. This is what's called artistic license. You are free to create at will. If you'd like to see some more of the before and afters, let me go back to that collection. I did quite a few samples. Again, these are some by my testers, my group testers. Okay, so they applied that. I would not want to run into that guy in a dark alley. Bokeh'd myself. That's the original. I bokeh'd myself. There's another before and after of one of my testers. Right. So definitely this person is into fine art, textures, and it works really well with this kind of work. Okay, so I show you these things to give you ideas, right? To spur your own creativity as to, okay, what is possible? Push the boundaries a little bit. Push the boundaries of what's possible and ask yourself constantly, what if? What if I tried this? What if I tried that? Okay, that's a stock image. You can find that on Unsplash. I don't think I bokeh that one. Let's see what else I've got. Oh, I was gonna bokeh the cats. Oh, I did bokeh Munch. And there she is. So she's a superstar. At least she thinks she is. And then there's cases like this where there's already some bokeh in the background, and I added to it. Okay, so it really, really is believable that the bokeh is there. Okay, that's a stock image as well. There's another one that I did, right, where I added the bokeh, right, bokeh and texture to make it believable. The colors match. Okay, so photography can be a lot more artistic than reality. Okay? You're not stuck with reality. There's the original, again, already has some bokeh, added some more. Okay. Let's see. I think those are the best ones. Oh, this was a fun one. Okay. Look at the colors here. And for fun, I thought I would try one of my bokehs that has all these red and yellows and so on and put it in the water. And it looks like it's rippling over the water. So I thought that one worked out really cool. All right. The colors. And let's see. Here's another one that worked well. I added some bokeh in the background like that, matching the flowers. And there we saw our lanterns. Right? I also added some bokeh into this night image of a cemetery, which was already kind of spooky. Right? So you can really use these. And the one that I did with the rose is literally just changing the background. Okay? You guys want to see this one before we go? You want to see the background change on this one? I'm going to show you this one. Let's take this into Luminar, right? Because Luminar with the new extensions, okay, if you have the background removal AI, okay, if you have the extensions, you'll be able to do this in Luminar really easily. And it opened on my wrong screen. Let me get it over here. And Corey Lewin says she likes today's version. I'm assuming that's of the lantern. And me too, actually. So like I said, I could process the same image multiple different times and get totally different things. Okay. Okay, to remove the background and replace it with something different, we just go into layer properties. Again, you need to have this extension. And when you open up the masking, you'll see background removal AI. So it's right below portrait background. So we just run the background removal AI. It analyzes the image. And then it should find the flower, because this is a really easy one to cut out, right? It's pretty cut and dry. The edges are nice and clean. If you have something with a person with, fuzzy hair or complicated outlines, it's more difficult. Okay, so this is what's happened. So I'm going to remove the background. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do, because it looks like there's a little part of the stem or the leaf down here. And I see how it's removed it. I was actually going to remove it on purpose because it was really distracting. Okay, so I'm just going to go in here and double check the refinement brush. See how it removed it? I'm actually okay with that. Okay, so I'm just going to refine this edge a little bit because it looks like it's kind of missed the edge of the flower. So I want to get that. I want to get that right there. But it did pretty good everywhere else. So when we check it, we just close the refinement brush panel. And when you see the squares pattern, okay, that's just the translucent part. That means that's translucent. And I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to zoom in here, because this part here, I'm going to actually tell it it's the background instead, because I think it's another leaf. And it should find the edge. Okay, so you're training Luminar to find the edge of this thing. Okay, then I'm going to go with the transition brush and just go around this edge here. Okay, so the transition brush, you're telling it, I'm overlapping the edge of the subject. When you're painting, okay, see how it's now found the edge better? Okay, so I'm happy with that. Now we can just add a new image. So if we want to add bokeh, we can do that. Did we have one that was kind of pink? Yeah, we got some pink bokeh. I think I'm going to go with a different one on this one. Let's go with this one. Okay, so now we want the blend mode normal at 100%. And then we just have to drag this layer down below the flower, and it becomes the background. Okay, now you can see that the edge of the flower is showing up a little bit white, and that's fine. All we need to do is a couple of different options, right? We could go into the flower here and actually change the blend mode of the flower, right? And I don't know if that's going to work. No, that's not going to work. We just have to do the mask a little bit better. I would just go around the edge with the transition brush and get rid of that little halo, right? But now that we've got this added as the background, you can do whatever you want with it, changing the color and so on, okay? If we want a different background, this one actually might be cool. I've got some of these Morocco backgrounds. Here, check this out. This one here was like an old wall with some Arabic writing on it. And I just thought it was cool. Oops. Oh, I removed it by accident. Let's find it again. There it is. Opacity 100. And I'm just going to move the rows up on top. Yeah, I like that better. So now we have that on top. Right? Scale's a little bit off. What I might do is actually resize the rows. Maybe something like this. And I might add a texture or something over top. But this one here with this Arabic writing, I've done it on top of some things as an overlay, and it actually works out really cool. I've also got some other ones which are neat with some tiles. All right, this one here is actually a tile floor or mosaic floor. in Morocco. And that one's kind of cool too. Okay. So we can actually use them together, right? If I want to change this one to, oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Let's change this one to overlay. And let's change this one to normal. We can even lower the opacity of this one so we can get really creative. See how the two are sort of blending together now? Now we've got some Arabic writing on top of the floor. And we've got something completely different. See? Maybe let's make the rows back to normal size. So I'm just resizing this layer. There we go. I've been inclined to put a texture over top, or maybe move this one. There we go. That's better. See, as soon as I move that on top of the rows, now it makes more sense, right? And I would also maybe adjust the color and apply a LUT here. Something to give it sort of more of a sepia tone look, an old look. There we go. Okay, so now we just have an art piece. Okay, so we went from a boring rose on a white background to something that's artistic. So those are some ideas for you on how to use overlays. Let me get back over here. And there's our bokeh in the background. See, I did green bokeh for today. Yeah, the Morocco writing one is actually really cool. I might play around with another texture pack and do some things like sheet music or crumpled paper and stuff like that, and just make some textures for you guys. So far we've got a Cuba texture pack and a Morocco texture pack. I may be coming out with one from India as well, because these countries have like amazing textures, right? But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Actually, it's kind of cool. So you see what happens when you just play around, right? It is fun, Brenda, right? And literally, I'm just playing around. I'm just playing around to show you guys what's possible. And then it's like, oh, how about this? How about this? How about this? So have that kind of mindset when you're doing your photo editing, and just see what you can come up with, right? Whether you're using Lightroom or Photoshop or Luminar or a combination of them all or something else completely. Doesn't matter what software you're using, just create. So let me get back to my little reminder here. Where are we? There we go. Okay, so one more time, Rob, if you could please share the link to our holiday sale. It's on till the 30th, and we also have gift certificates available now. So if you would like to give the gift of photography education or products to somebody else, we now have gift certificates available in $50 and $100 denominations. So check out the holiday sale. Rob is frantically finding links to things and putting those in the chat. And also, just a reminder, where are we? To submit your images. So our next live stream, geez, when is our next live stream going to be? Let me look at the calendar. Because next Saturday is New Year's Eve, so we will not be, did we say we were going to go live next week? I think we're not going live next week. So our next one is going to be January 7th. Okay, so January 7th will be our next live stream. There's the holiday sale link. And also, if you could provide the link for submitting, just this link right here. We want your holiday photos and snow and ice. So I'd love to see what you create with some bokeh and some textures over the holidays. Or if you want me to create some with your images, submit them. And we will have a play with those in January. So I would like to just say happy holidays to everyone. And for those of you that show up again and again and again, we are so grateful. please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. We're trying to hit 15,000 by the end of the year. We've got a couple more hundred to go to make that for 15,000 subscribers. Share with your friends. Tell everybody you know. Come subscribe to our channel because we've got tons of awesome stuff here. So happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Take care, everyone.